Hello YouTube, this is Black Thought, where I ramble podcast style about a Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia topic. Gameplay takes a backseat, feel free to tab out and listen while I screw around in game. This is just extra footage that I record. The topic for today is my JP retrospective, my initial takes on the month of October. Before I continue, make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video around. Drop a comment about what you think about this month of content. About only 40% of my viewers on average are subscribed, and I'm trying to hit 2,000 subscribers by the end of the year, so if you have not subscribed, please be sure to do so. And again, drop a like on this video. I'll be interacting with all the comments, so don't hesitate to ask questions or drop anything that you think. This one's a little late. I'm recording this on November 18th. I was trying to write notes for this and I kept putting it off, and then it's the middle of the month now and Cypher's LD just dropped. I'm like, oh crap, the month's almost over and I didn't do the month for the last one. That's how you get backlogged and you get stuck. So we're recording this right now. Starting with the normal pace, quality of life and game changes. What changed in October? We have the high armor realization. You can now awaken your Lufenia armor. There's a new books in ingots. The caps can go even farther in terms of party and self HP damage caps. 20 Lufenia tokens is equal to 5 nuggets, which is ouch. You get half a book for completing a Lufenia, I believe. I'm not quite sure. It's pretty convoluted, and I don't have enough armor tokens anyways, because I followed the rule of if you have LD, you get high armor, which was horrible in hindsight, and I plan to make a separate video about that, explaining why you should be a little careful, and I kind of alluded to it in my Lufenia token video, but continuing on. Nuggets seem to be tied to new burst content, so it seems like we get nuggets every 2 weeks when a new burst comes out, but not on every event. I need to double check on that. And again, that'll be in my video explaining it all because it's a bit confusing and convoluted. We also got high armor reworks. Debuff armor's HP damage cap was Debuff armor's HP damage cap was up to 15%, which is pretty nice because it didn't change before. And well, no, that's not true. I think it was just a little more. And what else? Inspiration Brave Gain. So that's the Brave Gain armor. The increase went from 5% to 30%, which is hilariously different. That change brought inspiration. That change brought Inspiration's armor up to insane levels of good now. 5% was a summon board passive. 30% is 6% of the summon board passives, and that's almost a direct counter to Brave Gain reduction, which makes those battery units that have Inspiration armor, who were previously screwed over, now they're pretty good. That's a lot of help for them. In terms of balance, that's, I guess, a smart thing. They had to undo their oopsie by making Brave Gain reduction permanent. What hasn't changed? We still can't auto before battles. Bruh. Come on, man. Oh, I guess what's also important in the quality of life is, or maybe that's overlapping with, yeah, never mind, screw this, edit this out. There's no Abyss in JP still. There's no double World of Illusions for artifact tokens. Global has all the quality of life that JP does at this point, so JP is back to struggle mode. Shout out to the beta version. Anyways, getting right into content. Let's give my takes and my impressions about how I think things will play out. First, we have Divine Alexander, where we got Golbez's rework, LD burst, and high armor realization, blah blah blah. That's a mouthful. Ugh. He got big damage and refund mostly on his LD. He has, on his base skills, he has more dumps, and his burst effect is an aura freeze effect like Setzer's freeze, except it's not debuff, it's burst effect based, and I think it raises HP damage cap as well. That's pretty nifty for shutting out any Brave Gains. It's the binding cold that he has, but not really. That's pretty good. Golbez is a stellar damage dealer. That is all he does, but he's very good at it, provided he can hit weakness damage. If he can't hit weakness damage, and I'll talk about that a little later, he's completely useless. It's pretty sad. Also, they reran Hope's LD because I guess that's their trend now. Instead of introducing old LDs with LD boards, they have no intention of catching those up anytime soon, apparently. Who knows what their plan is. Hope's LD reran, and he got his high armor realization. He's a support armor, so now his damage cap is upped, but when does he hit the damage cap? It helps party members too, but I don't see any good reason to spend armor ingots on Hope unless you love him, but I guess that's the trend they're going for now. As for my polls, I got Golbez and got lucky. If you haven't seen that, check that out. Search it on my channel. I can't link more than 5 cards, so I won't tag that. But I Luxac Golbez pretty hard, his LD and burst. The challenge was actually kind of tanky. It's been feeling lately like you need LD for challenges, which I don't know. Challenges seem to be scaling a little more with the content, so it's not complete face roll. Like you can just 0 to 3 it, but at the same time, you should following my strategy of getting the 2 weeks energy has always been paying off. So I continue to do that. I think I did Hope, Golbez, and Purple Thancred. All this per usual on my channel. The Lufenia, woo boy. All of Alex's turns are now framed, which means you can't delay it by normal means. You can break delay it. Could you break delay it? I don't think you can break. All his turns are framed. You can't delete his turns. You can't delay it via delay methods. You can't break delay it either. You just had to shave it. Although the nifty part now was that if you did break him when he did his massive Brave Gain, then he would delay himself a couple turns, which allowed you to shave the next part a lot better. They introduced a new mechanic in which consecutive turns, specifically on this fight, was 8 in a row. You get punished, so you can't Terra Yang your way to victory or 0 boss turns because he sets all Brave and HP damage to 0 unless he gets to act. It is immune to target lock, so taunt, freeze, the generic variant from Setzer, defense down, RCL's LD buff, which prevents Brave Gain, and Waka's LD, which can also prevent Brave Gain. So they really wanted to encourage Golbez burst here. The orb requires just straight up dark damage. So if you didn't have Golbez or you didn't have Zonde, then you were probably a bit sad. I think I saw some Dark Cecil around and some Realm ones, but they were tricky. Jury's out on that. Very restrictive fight, but if you had Golbez, especially if you had his burst, and this fight just melted easily. Huge example of synergy bias. I used Golbez, Aerith, and Hope and clapped it, but I know people who skipped on Golbez and had a hard time on this fight, so that's just something to be aware of. Okay, as for Golbez, and I'll talk about this later in the loser section, but as soon as content resists Dark, he's just done. Or Dark Absorb, immune to Imperil. Like at least some of the Imperil characters, like Cecil can live if he's not hitting holy damage, unless it's Absorb. But if Element Imperil Resist comes out and Golbez is just out, period. And that's his big weakness, and I'll be talking about that later. Moving on, we have Nine's Lost Chapter. Nine got a rework through his LD boards. Oh boy, he got bigger auras. He got skill recovery on his LD use, the shield skill specifically. Party Brave damage up, I believe. He got the works. Read it for yourself, but he got a lot. Fujin also got her LD, 80, and high armor realization. Ugh, I hate saying that. She got Embrave base battery after every attack. That's it. Kind of mid, honestly. I'm not they kind of lowballed her. She didn't even get Fujin didn't even get weakness damage up. Like she just got battery after everything, and that's it. At best, it feels like she's only good for double wind enchant calls if you have her LD. I mean, she's good in the party along with characters that come a little later like Bartz and Noel, but they lowballed her hard, and I'm a little sad about that. As for my polls, I already had 9 from the free poll on his event. I actually free polled his LD and EX, I think, when the event first came out, so I skipped this banner and just maxed out 9. The challenge was tanky. There weren't many options. I think you kind of needed both 9 and Golbez to do this, or else you just get slapped. Probably Golbez was the most necessary. Fujin had 80, so I did it with EX Fujin, LD 9, and LD Golbez. I could see Fujin getting swapped for Barrett maybe, but doing this without 9, or maybe if you just had 9 Golbez Fujin maybe. But this challenge was on the tougher side just because of how thick it was. So good luck, have fun without 9. The Lufenia, oh boy, this was another doozy after the Alex doozy. Oh man, this thing was immune to HP silence, paralyze, terror, and taunt. So that off the bat restricted a lot of things. And on top of that, which isn't, and this is really the fun part of these Lufenias, because the orb is one thing to deal with, but the other mechanics are usually what screw a lot of people out. The orb is to deal weakness damage, so that's fine. Like, just bring elemental damage, but the boss also instant kills any elemental attacks that aren't holy or wind. So you're like, I need to hit weakness damage. Let me just bring Paladin Cecil. Okay, and then you get slapped because it counters you instantly. So if you don't hit dark or wind damage, then you're just dead. Zonde unfortunately falls victim to this as well because he has fire and earth in his kit, and that counts. So even though he's enchanting the party with dark, if he actually attacks, then GG, you're done. He would have been so great here too. So you need either dark damage, so it's Leon. Leon's probably not going to help much. You need Golbez or you need Fujin. This orb was heavily catered towards Fujin. Sadly, Fujin isn't that great, but you could her base call enchants wind, so you could kind of sneak away with that maybe. Who else does wind? I can't even think. I know I saw some Dark Cecil runs too, but this fight was pretty freaking restrictive. They do a lot of big AoE nukes, so 9 was obviously still very good here. And the ads have the orb, not the main guy. And while both ads are active, each main node has a 20% HP damage reduction, which is also ouch. This fight was tricky. I brought Golbez 9 and who else did I bring? I don't know. I don't remember, but I brought Golbez and 9, which was pretty much the standard team here. And I killed it barely, but it was tough. This was a tough fight, very restrictive. So think about that if you're planning out your pulls. This fight's pretty hard without synergy. Very synergy biased. Now we have Kadaj's event. Kadaj, the surprise character, Advent Children. Why? There's still main party members missing from other games. So when I saw Kadaj was getting in the game, I really groaned. But he's cool in his movie, and I fell for the hype, and I enjoy him. But talking about his kit, he has gold frame debuffs, which is super unique. He frames any debuffs he applies on his when Kadaj uses his EX, he frames any buffs he applies. He has a stacking debuff that debuffs various stats, and the big stack is he cuts enemy brave gain in half and takes it for himself. So say the boss gains 100,000 brave, Kadaj is going to get 50k of that. He's just going to prevent them from getting it, and he's going to take it for himself. That's very, very good. And his gold frame debuffs cannot be cleansed by normal methods. So if the boss says cleanses silver frame debuffs, and then Kadaj's will stick around. So his debuffs are permanent. You can give him an E-Sphere, and if he inflicts that debuff, he'll also frame that, which is actually pretty clutch. So if you throw a defense down, that's very good. And then it can get overridden because it's a generic by stronger defense down. It's a pretty cool interaction. His EX sets to 0 on EX attacks, so he's also good. Not only is he good for shutting down giant brave gains, he can also set to 0 and then brave attack, so he can cut down any massive brave gains that he didn't shut down before. He's mostly single target. He focuses on one target and he has splash, so his damage isn't too high, but his utility is insane. I pulled him. I think I ticket pulled him. Didn't take too much. The challenge I destroyed with 9 Golbez and Kadaj. Maria and Alice could probably work somewhere in that team, but triple LD stomp, why not let it fly? Lufenia, oh boy, this was a bit of a doozy. You couldn't paralyze, couldn't HP silence, couldn't confuse it, couldn't tear it, couldn't sleep it. The bosses cleanse every 10% HP, I believe it was, and the orb is not that tricky. It requires 2 debuffs active, and as long as 2 debuffs are active, when anyone takes an action, they get a +2 on their turn. The problem is that since they cleanse so often, debuff maintenance is tricky. So you have Kadaj who frames his debuffs, then you won't have that problem because they can't cleanse them. They also, at I think certain thresholds, gain massive amounts of brave when they cleanse, and they set all brave damage to 0, so you need some sort of instant break or gravity or brave damage you need instant break or some sort of way to cut their brave down or prevent them from getting brave, aka Golbez burst, or you need to just eat whatever HP attack they send at you by using 9's LD. I don't see how Fujin would help with this at all. Yeah, yikes. You deal 1s until you break them, so you need some way to deal with that. That constant cleanse is annoying, but I think they were inherently weak to wind and darkness, so that's something to get out of it. Another somewhat restrictive fight, but people got creative and got around it. You can brute force it, I believe. I don't remember the teams because unfortunately I did this way too late, so I'm not quite remembering what went on. And I used, again, 9 Kadaj Golbez. Super full synergy stomp. No, this guy also leaves. This video leaves. He just use full synergy. That was me. But just unapologetically. I understand what I did, but I had no interest in experimenting with that fight. Kadaj is cool though, and I like him, and he has staying power because there's a lot of brave gain bosses that can be shut down by his debuff. All right, moving on. We have the Bart's Heretics. Bart's got a rework in LD and burst. Oh boy. His rework has self wind enchant on a frame buff. It combines all his generics plus self enchant into 1, which means he He can be enchanted since he's enchanting his base skills, which don't have an element, which is nice. It's not inherent. I love it. And he has on his LD an aura. Well, his LD is an attack which sets Brave to 0 and then attacks. And then he has an aura wind imperil. Right, that's right, an aura imperil. No debuff base. So if the enemy is weak, if the enemy is immune to weakness damage down debuffs, Bartz ignores that with an aura imperil. That's pretty nice. So he's guaranteed to pretty much always hit weakness damage unless the boss, let's say, absorbs wind. Then he's shut out, but that's whatever. You can kind of get around it by enchanting his base skills, but you probably wouldn't want to do that anyways. His skill ones, oh yeah, that's another big thing about his LD that kind of ties into his rework, but he ups his own splash damage. So his skill 1 splashes now and has a billion hits. It's still single target. Skill 2 is also single target. It has a double dump and splashes. So with his LD buff active, he's going to increase the amount of splash he does, which is very nice. And his LD grants him a one-time HP attack. That instant break, which is very clutch as well, just for giant Brave gains. So let's go. Bartz is really the Brave shade extraordinaire, along with getting upped auras. He got the goods, really, and he's a battery monster. His burst is a progressive aura. It builds up as Bartz gets turns, and at the third stack, it's on par with some of the stronger burst effects. Bartz is slow, so it's a double-edged sword, but he's not great as a friend unit. But on your team, just letting him sit there and be slow while that burst buff is active is very, very strong. They decided to follow with the rerun trend for LDs and rerun Penelo and give her support armor, high armor realization. Penelo's kind of dated at this point, so I don't know why anyone would want to blue her armor unless you really love Penelo, but that's good. I got to use her in synergy again, at least for the challenge. And then in the middle of this was the Galuf on a one-off banner with LD that had Bart's burst on it. His LD makes him immortal like Arden, and he drops his HP after every attack, which doesn't seem to really be relevant unless you're managing some shenanigans. He has Brave damage up aura for the party, which is stellar, along with other auras. He also gives party HP regen. It's a fat HP regen, and he has a second double dump counter. So he'll do his normal blade block counter, and then he'll do a Brave gain into HP dump, and then Brave hits, and then another HP dump. So he's doing 3 Brave hits. He's doing 3 HP damage hits on the off turns, which is stellar, along with being a Brave damage aura bot. Galuf is looking real. He's looking real good. As for pulls, I pulled Bartz and I pulled Galuf. I luck-sag Bartz pretty hard. Galuf, I also got on some tickets, I believe. I don't remember. It was so long ago. But I'm very happy with both of them. Both of them are very, very good characters. Galuf has been essential in a lot of my team, just because those auras are nuts, and him dodging stuff. I hadn't maxed Galuf before, so he's such a good unit, such a good base kit. I can't believe I underestimated him so far back. As for the challenge, I used Bartz, Penelo, and a 0-3 Steiner. I did it before Galuf's LD came out, so I hadn't maxed him. I destroyed it. Bartz kind of carried it. Penelo batteried everything, and Steiner was just there. There was so much overflow auras between Bartz and Penelo that Steiner was hitting. I think he was going above 99k anyways, even though he's 0-3, which is hilarious. Not a real, provided synergy was there. Build synergy. This challenge was not difficult at all. The Lufenia was the Karen Bears, weird, and they were inherently melee and range weak, which is even weirder. It was immune to poison, and it's immune to imperil, so we're already coffin dancing in Golbez at this point, and it's gonna be a trend for the second half of this fight, and probably the next month as well. And they're immune to their own debuff, so you can't Yuffie it back. Wind damages the orb, but you can't imperil them, so you could bring Fujin and enchant the party, and they'll hit weakness damage. Or you could just Bartz it away, and I think it was plus 10 on the orb, so as long as you brought Bartz, this orb was pretty much under control. They had massive Brave gains at points during the fight, and you had to cut them down. So basically, if you just saved Bart's LD and then cut him down when it came out, or had some other method to deal with it, then you'd be pretty fine. This wasn't a terrible Lufenia. I definitely pulled back the FU button after these previous few fights. Bartz eats it alive, really. It's a joke with him. Without him, Kadaj is a good substitute. Or Golbez would have been great if he could hit weakness damage, but he can't, so yikes. And yeah, Bartz feels really good. Now we have the worst fight of the month, Edward's Lost Chapter. Oh boy. Edward got 80. His LD HP attacks, but doesn't Brave Dump, and he has upped auras. Very solid. Palom got an LD that re-breaks the enemies and gives consecutive turns on break with a roided up HP attack. He is an ice nuke now. He's got crazy damage. They did him very good. especially if you blew his armor, because he's hitting weakness damage and he's just blowing things up. As for pulls, I pulled Edwards, LD, and dipped because I didn't want to go in for Palom because I don't really care about the character. He looks very good now, but I just had no intent, and I had no reason to use him really. Edwards' call is really good. That's really the main reason, because I'm not quite sure I can justify him the party anymore, because his damage isn't too great, and yeah, utility is there, but his probably situational now, because he does have the battery armor for himself, but his own damage again just isn't super stellar. He's got a lot of use as a call because pocket sleep is too good, and applying his stacked debuff on his call is also very clutch. The challenge I did Edward, Bart, Scallop, and clapped it. Did Brainless. Your other options were using who else on the banner? Hope reran, so Hope was synergy, so you could use him or you could use Palom. So this challenge was probably not going to be too tricky for anyone. As for the Lufenia, this was a horrible Lufenia. I hate it so much. Turn counts were low, and the bosses were restrictive. So how it works is the orb is ice damage. That's probably the least threatening part of this. It's immune to paralyze. It's immune to HP silence. It's immune to confuse. However, they let terror through. Thank you, devs. I had such a hard time for this. I have so many bloopers from this fight. If I'd recorded this earlier, then I'd probably be using the bloopers from that out of this fight, but I already kind of recycled all of those in my other videos. This was a DPS race incarnate, which really just generates the worst fights possible. Man. At like 79% HP, they turn green or red. They turn some color, and they delay themselves. And if they get a turn, they just kill you. It's a single target tech, and they just kill you. It ignores evasion. They just kill you. So you have to kill them very quickly. So I guess the idea was Palom, and he'll re-break them and he'll destroy them. But in practice, it's just so awful. If you don't have Palom or whatever, man, and the worst part is Galuf is synergy, but he can't even dodge this part. So if Galuf could dodge this part, well, he'd shut it down. So it wouldn't be that big of a challenge. But man, and the turn count is on like 60s or something. So you have to be doing insane damage. It's fitted for the instant. It's fitted for the zero. It's fitted for the instant turn to Palom gets that don't add to the turn count, and or Galuf doing damage in the off turn. But if you don't kill them, so you can sleep them with Edward and get as much damage in as possible, but you have to do it very, very fast. The guaranteed hit set to 0 dispel is never a fun thing to deal with. So Golbez was actually usable here, but he's so slow, and he can't help the orb because he's not doing ice damage. I think I saw some people use him here, but he was really not super optimal here. So while it wasn't Rip Golbez here, and his burst effect didn't stop the instant kill either. So that was not really optimal. I hate this fight. Hate it. Tried so many times. So much garbage. Nobody likes this fight. Nobody likes DPS races. Devs, stop doing this. I ultimately ended up using Kurasame, and I think it was Bart and Galuf, I think it was, and I barely did it. Kurasame was there for the HP damage up and not much else, because he definitely wasn't doing much damage. Thankfully, Galuf and Bart's auras helped him not be pathetic damage, but it was still debuff apply and then get him out of there. I don't know what to say about this fight except I hate it. If you're planning for the future, keep an eye on this fight because this one's very, very nasty. Oh man. All right, last we have the boss rush, Tifa's LD and rework. I don't need to say much about Tifa's LD and rework because I'm sure you've heard of it right now, because I'm pretty sure she sold every content in the game. She's absolutely broken. Her LD can do like 700k damage a pop. So can her skill 1. I don't know what they were thinking. They need to give whatever drugs they gave the dev who designed her to give. They need to give that to Sarah, Sephiroth, Fujin. The balance is so inconsistent in this game, it hurts. I pity Tifa, no regrets. She is OP. Man, did not regret it. This was a boss rush, so there's no challenge. You get the burst token through doing the boss rush. So let me walk through that a bit, and again, per usual, I have videos for all of this to show that I did it, blah, blah, blah. Look it up if you want to see it. 3 parties is for the max rewards, per usual. Uploaded my vids, blah, blah, blah. Wave 1, I use Tifa Garland and Paladin Cecil. This wave is immune to all debuffs, so Rip Golbez, and it's Thunder Absorb, so Rip Lightning. I didn't let it get a turn, so I actually don't really know what the mechanics are, but I know it gains a frame turn at some point and kind of messes you up. But I just delayed it and DPS'd it with Tifa Garland, Paladin Cecil, and that worked enough for me. Paladin Cecil, again, doesn't need to hit weakness damage to be useful, so he's just there for the brave damage up and the HP damage up auras from his LD. Wave 2 was the 2 Jack bosses, It's immune to paralyze and speed down, and all the orb was take brave damage. So in this wave felt like big filler, so I was able to nuke it down with Paladin, Cecil, Tifa, and Garland some more. Pretty simple. Delayed it, nuked it, bursted, blah blah blah. Wave 3, the orb was take magic brave damage. So I swapped to Edward, Kuja, and Kadaj. The trees were inherently holy weak, which is very good for if you brought Paladin Cecil or if you brought Kuja. Kuja's still putting in work. He's still relevant. Great character. It was heavy thunder and dark resist, so rip Golbez again. No, can't use him here either. But I don't know why they're doing like that. He would have been great because it was magic brave damage and they did brave gains, but it is what it is. They like to cleanse, however, and do a big brave gain. So Edward, this wave felt kind of Edward focused because his stacking debuff prevents brave gain and he can just shut down the brave gain with sleep. And Kadaj, even if they cleansed, his debuff stuck around. So I kind of clapped up this wave pretty easily too. The last wave was the Kais boss and it was immune to Imperil again. So again, RIP Golbez. The orb needed wind damage. So I brought Bartz, Trey, and Galuf. So there was some mechanic where they cleanse and they do a guaranteed hit, and I didn't know how to get around it, but Galuf was able to eat the attack anyways. And the orb was plus 10, I believe, if you hit weakness damage. So Bartz really went to town. I dropped a Fujin base call on Galuf or something, and then let Trey hit weakness damage. This wave melted because I brought all the guns out. Something I need to probably make a separate video about for boss rush, but I used a bunch of bursts because I had them and it made things easier, but I don't think you need bursts again, and I'm going to keep pushing that. And when these boss rushes are up in global, there's going to be burstless runs to kind of prove the doomers wrong, but they have the synergy mechanic, and that's pretty useful. Is it possible no burst, no synergy? Probably. Am I going to do it? Not unless somebody pays me. I don't really need to give any thoughts on Tifa because she's broken. That's the thought on Tifa. Tifa's absolutely broken. Now we're gonna conclude with my retro closing thoughts, pulls, and investment. Again, I pulled Golbez LD. I blued his high armor to farm Alexander faster, and that was a good investment for 2 weeks. Now I'm not so sure. I already had 9's gear, so I skipped that banner, and I didn't realize any of their armors. I pulled Kadaj, left him at base high armor. Pulled Bart's base high armor again. Pulled Edward, and then pulled Tifa, and I blued her. So that's 2 blues high armor in the last month, and then I was very poor on high armor tokens because I didn't allocate them right. Takeaways. Hashtag rip Golbez. He is the easiest unit to screw over in the world, and they did it hard. As soon as he can't hit weakness damage, or they cleanse a lot, and cleansing a lot isn't a problem because he can just reapply with skill 2, but if they're elemental resist down immune or dark absorb immune, the Golbez is just done. Absolutely done. This has continued in the next month, where half the fights were annoying and restrictive. Like, I think they kicked off the month with Noel's fight being immune to element resist down, or was it just dark? It was one of them, but it was a hard rip Golbez again for some reason. Half the fights this month were annoying and restrictive. Alexander, 9, and Edward's Lost Chapter being the big ones to watch out for if you're thinking about future content. Those ones were not fun if you didn't pull. Ooh, man. But that's the usual. That always happens in JP. We just deal with it or pull. Get over it. The winners this month, Bart's. Aura Imperil is hilariously, stupidly broken. And if you have Fujin's LD as a call or on the team, and you don't even need to inflict the debuff, you're just always going to be hitting weakness. And his beat T effect is super strong. He's not a good friend, but another winner, 9. 9 got a lot. 9 got a whole lot. He's really just offensive, massive auras, good AoE damage. They did him justice. Kadaj is cool and has a strong niche, and they designed his character well. His damage isn't stellar, and they don't really like debuffers doing a lot of damage, but his utility is still strong enough that if you build a team around him, he's going to be a solid pick for any content that has massive brave gains. Tifa is the biggest winner of this month, obviously. She is ridiculously OP. I don't need to say much more about that. Losers. Golbez, he's rolling in his grave because of Imperil immunity and or dark resist / absorb. He is so easy to shout out of content, and I'm kind of salty that I blued his armor because I couldn't use him for like a month straight. And it kind of turned me off using the character because they kind of love, especially because if there's an element orb, his utility is just damage. And that is a good thing generally, but he has such a kit where he's a glass cannon where being just damage is cool, like Tifa, for example, but if you've got an element tied to your just damage, then it makes you a bit trickier to fit in comps. And his burst effect is niche. While useful, it can be helpful, but when he's good, and when he's bad, he's really bad. So you get what you get with Golbez. Fujin's LD, that was very just lackluster, just battery, and we already have battery tags. She's mostly just going to be a call slave or Bart's best friend, tied to the hip like Bart's Young is tied to Terra's hip. Edward, I'm kind of mad on Edward. His damage isn't very good, and I don't feel like he quite justifies his presence on the team. Maybe this will be wrong, but that's my take. He might just end up as a call slave as well, which is rip. But he had a lot of time to shine in the past, and people usually in this game don't shine twice, so something to be aware of. And me, I'm a big loser who overused Lufenia armor tokens in the past and gave them to everyone with an LD, and now I'm broke for trying to get blue armors because I just I blued Noel's armor, and now I'm at 0. Although I gained some back, and it's kind of hard not to use them, and also while running out of blue armor tokens, so my armor tokens are in shambles. Don't be like me. Make smarter investments. This is not saying that you'll run out. It's saying be smart and you won't run out. Be smart because you'll have to use them eventually. Other thoughts. Now that they're rerunning units and giving them high armor, Penelo and Hope reruns are so weird. Like, we have old reps without LD boards, like Noctis and Arden and Toto and Vaughn are just rotting. I don't know what's going on with their scheduling, how they plan to catch those units up, because the pacing in this game is so off. In the resource management, it's just all over the place. But it probably looks a lot worse than it already is, and then looking back on it, it never really pans out. All right, and that's all. I hope you guys enjoyed. Again, if you stuck around this far, drop a like on the video, subscribe, share this video, drop a comment about your thoughts about this month, and I'll be interacting with stuff. I know people like this longer form content. I need to find some way to slice this up and make it more relevant once the content rolls around in global. Maybe in some form of me holding myself accountable for my takes, but we'll see how that pans out. And with that, I'm gonna go live my life. I'll talk to you guys later. Catch you guys on the next one. Peace.